panel happening yesterday, and we had a huge number of people involved in that, both in the first round and in the second round. So if you're interested, that's a grant where you're looking at really national and international change agent work. So it's something that you start off with the Learning Lunchbox and move through. So we welcome your applications for that at some stage next year. We also had a special Learning Lunchbox yesterday, which was about student experience and student projects. So I'm not sure whether you had the opportunity to have a look at those, another aspect of what's happening around the university. So starting off on today's Learning Lunchbox, I would like to introduce the team of the library and law coming together. This is a really exciting project about skills, research and learning skills, which is close to my heart. So I'd like to invite the three panel members over here to start on their presentation.
Thank you very much, Tina. Good morning, just afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for your time today. We'll be nice and brief and try and share with you the magic of what we've tried to achieve. I started a law faculty peer mentor program in 2008. I started at Monash in 07. I was an alumni from 04. I did a master's in the law faculty, and I used to be the student experience manager. I was charged with trying to create community and boost individual students' experience whilst doing their law degree. And I thought community was the key for that, to give people relationships and connectedness and togetherness. And the idea was that it would assist their transition to university by making people feel part of a community. So launched in 2008, it's mandatory in inverted commas, as much as anything can be at tertiary education. So all 550 odd first years, up to 650 some years, have been through the program. And now, of course, as time marches on and waits for nobody, it's now 9 years old, which is just astonishing. I've ran it in collaboration with the Law Student Society, who are a very focused bunch of students, and it's chugged along. It's now become normal, so it's had about 5,000 students through it. And each year there's 70 to 100 mentors who are volunteers. So it's sort of become normal, if you like, to law students starting at Monash. It was essentially social and community-based. It's about forming networks and connections, peers. There's always a desire to give it some academic credibility. I was also in charge of transition and orientation for the law faculty, and there was just always a desire, even at central transition level with Jude Little and all the other faculties, there was always a desire to somehow give academic credit, if you like, to the orientation space. Social is great and good in and of itself, but is there any way we can prepare students for university study? So for years we had this independent peer mentor program going on. Meanwhile, in the law library was just such an academic transition tool happening concurrently. So we'd have everyone together during the Monash Law Day. Was always a Monday. We'd have a talk from the dean. We'd have a peer mentor orientation around the university campus. We'd have a big barbecue lunch. And meanwhile, students were going in dribs and drabs into the library for their academic transition. Welcome to the library space. And then, like a diamond in the dark, a couple of years ago, I thought, well, why don't I combine the two? And we'll integrate the peer mentor program into the library tours. And I had a particularly competent peer mentor program coordinator, a young lady called Sophie Traversky from the LSS. And I thought, well, now's the time to do it, because it's organised, it's structured, it's together. Some of the boys in the previous years, some of the boys, I didn't have it together that much, you know, and it wasn't comprehensive. And it's important that anything we do at university is fair, equitable, and comprehensive. And wouldn't it be terrible to have a limping program where 86% of people did it and the other 14 didn't? You know, so I had to wait until it was mature enough to be good enough, to be comprehensive, to be able to interact with our fantastic librarians. So it was kind of ready at the end of last year. So beginning of this year, we gave it a whirl. Over to you, Knaggs.
Fantastic. So now we're going to talk about the program itself.
And keep in mind, the idea of this program for this part is to introduce research and learning skills to the beginning students. But we were also very focused on making them feel comfortable and welcome into the law library space so that they know it's a place that they can come to. Hannah and I are speaking on behalf of all the law library staff because we were all involved in doing the program and organising the program. Also, as Lloyd mentioned, the Law Student Society. So Hannah, and she had a team of peer mentors, Sophie, and she had a team of peer mentors that she worked with. So they were also obviously integral to what we did. So Case Chase is intended to be a fun, quick activity, which is achievable for the students, so that they feel, you know, that they've achieved something, they've learned something, you know, they've got a quick win on O Day when they start. So what we do is explain how a case citation is formed and the elements of a case citation. And then we get the students to, you know, find cases based on the citation. Except we've taken one of the elements out, so they have to kind of go through and work through, how do I do this? And this is something that's a fundamental skill for them that they need to do throughout their course. So it's something that's, you know, really grounded and central to what they have to do as they go forward. Before 2000 or this year, we've run this activity for a while and it's been successful. But as Lloyd said, people have come in kind of little bits, dribs and drabs. Well, big bits and little bits across 2 weeks. So we've usually run it in a week and week 1. So the real innovation here was the introduction of the peer mentors. So what that let us do was manage most of the group coming in on orientation day. And also it gave us a way of adding value because the peer mentors were able to talk about, you know, the cases, how they found the cases themselves, how useful it was going to be for the students. So it added value, a lot of value as well. So what we did was the students were broken up into groups and each of the groups had peer mentors with them, assigned to them for the whole day. And then, as I say, we would give each of the groups, you know, have a look and see these cases, find these cases. And then they would be able to go back to the peer mentor and say, well, how should I go about this? You know, I found it or not, or, you know, what else should I do? Which was a great way of doing it, we think. We also chose cases that were really significant so that the students had heard of. So a good example is Marlborough. And, you know, it's great to see the students were like really excited and engaged. I found this, you know, look at this, I'm holding the law in my hands. So it was great to engage them from the start and kind of, you know, excite them about the law. And in the past, as I said, the activity was kind of spread across a couple of weeks. And we did have very high numbers, but this year we had 93% come to the Case Chase activity, and most of those came on orientation day, which was a lot of people through, but it was manageable, as I said, because we had, you know, the peer mentors and, you know, everyone engaged and working with it.
Okay, so the other half of our sort of orientation transition program was the study skills session. In the past, the study skills session has been run in week 1, delivered by a learning skills advisor. It used to go for about 50 minutes and it was in a lecture format. So this year, we changed that up to involve the peer mentors in the process. In fact, I designed it, but the peer mentors delivered the material. So I was there to facilitate in the background, but they were the ones who were actually teaching on the ground. In addition, we reduced it to half an hour to the 30-minute slot. Again, this is about delivering something quickly that's accessible, that the students could get engaged with, so that they didn't have to commit to an entire hour out of their week 1 when they're quite busy anyway, and confronted by a lot of different tasks that they have to keep under control. The plan behind the session was to provide several game formats. so the gamification of study skills. One was a sort of like a choose your own adventure, adding to a story, so that the group would all contribute a line to a story about the perfect law student and what the perfect law student would be. The other games were things like two truths and a lie, so pretty familiar to all of us, I'm sure. Again, the point behind both of these games was to communicate that there's no such thing, obviously, as the perfect law student, and everybody's path to good performance comes through different ways of engaging with the material. Some of the peer mentors loved the games and they used them. Other peer mentors used one of the games but not the other two. So it was really up to the peer mentor as to how they would sort of present that material, so long as they hit the objectives that I came up with as a sort of basis for that session. It was a really interesting exercise for many of the mentors. For some of them, they were very, very open with the students about how they found transition to first year from high school. So some of them shared things like notes. I had one student who brought up her note-taking system and guided the students in her group through how she organised them, how she colour-coded them, how she used tables as a sort of base for the way that she took notes and then studied from those notes. Other mentors were more sort of meta about the material that they gave the students and were more interested in the stress associated with first year and how they handled that. There were places within the half hour where the new students could direct the conversation with the mentor so that they could deal with particular issues that were worrying them. In terms of themes that came out of that, one of the big ones was making friends. So in a competitive course like law, some students feel like they can't make friends with other people in the cohort because they are directly competing with them for marks. So that was brought up and discussed in many of the sessions. The other things that came up were what sorts of things you should do in lectures. So how many notes, what sort of notes, hence the bringing up the format for the other student. Whether or not you do all of the required reading. If you don't do all of it, how do you fake doing some of it or all of it? How do you take notes from that reading? How do you read strategically and effectively so that you are engaging with particular ideas and methodologies in ways that you need to get a handle on early? Even sort of day one of week one, exams came up as a concern because for many law students, this is the basis of their performance units, and this is what they have to do. For all of the mentors, they all came back to the point that this is how I did it, this is how I've coped, but it might not work for you. Try it and then try something else that might work better. Or my friend does this, but I do this. It was very much, there are all of these different ways. We have all of these different ways of doing it, and this is what works for me. So that works quite well as a sort of jumping off point for how do we perform in this space. In terms of the engagement with the study skills, about a third of the cohort got through these study skills sessions, and that's at least once. On top of that, some students came back 2 or 3 times to get a different mentor, to get a different conversation, and to add to a conversation they'd already had. So that's also an interesting trend that we noticed. Okay, so we just wanted to talk really quickly about the ways that this impacted on the sort of professional learning outcomes for the law students. So even in first year, an important takeaway point from this is that these are skills that they will need once they get out there into the profession. For us, within the library, but also within the faculty and for the LSS, this is a concern that we're equipping students appropriately to enter the profession with the right skills, which aren't necessarily being developed consistently as they go through their degree. So just to take one of these as the example, the collaboration and teamwork is a really important part of both halves of the sessions. So both case chase and the study skills sessions both encourage the students to work together, not to compete necessarily, although without meaning to, they do, but also to develop those networks, those peer networks which underpin their work over the semester. Some of the evidence we have that this works is that students come back to the library staff and tell us that this icebreaker meant that they made friends in first year. The LSS program already exists to help with those social networks, but within classes, quite often students are reluctant to make friends with people within the sort of academic space. So it does help with that sort of transition issue. And also the students appreciated that these were small, achievable things that they could win at within the orientation in week 1. So for them, it was sort of empowering and made them feel like this wasn't going to be an insurmountable task.
And this is just in conclusion, our takeaways that we thought of that were apparent to us. So we're going to follow the same model next year because it was so successful. There's probably a couple of things that we might do slightly differently that we learned as we went through. But certainly overall it was incredibly successful, and it's also really nice that you know, I still can, you know, recognise people from that first day, and you know, I think they feel a bigger sense of ownership and, you know, being able to come into the library space and, you know, be active there as well.
Yeah. I'll just add to that that is the magic of transition, is that if you catch people early, that becomes normal. You know, Lonely Larry on week 6 is Lonely Larry in year 2. You know, if you normalise this stuff, make it normal. If you don't go to the library on the first week, maybe you won't go for the first month. You know, so if we get them in early, connect, that peer learning is magic. And obviously next year it'll be heavily branded with 10th anniversary logos on the peer mentor program. Thanks. Any questions from anyone?
Could I just ask how big the groups were with the peer mentors?
45 groups, 550, so about 30.
So I think we had on O-Day the sessions organised half an hour apart, and we had... Yeah, that's right.
Times 4 or 5 tables.
Yeah.
So we have up to 40, 50.
Yeah.
Now, I'm no accountant, but from a bean counter's perspective, rather than having staff available for 2 weeks for all those dribby sessions, imagine having a very busy but one day, get it done. Much more efficient, effective, and again, normalises that experience. That's what you do. You go to law school, you go to the library.
What did happen though, which was something that I'd like to address next time, is that the groups kind of bled a bit. So at the start, they were like, you know, came in with their peer mentor on time, you know, and that was good. But then as we went through the day, the groups got smaller, some got bigger, they came in at staggered kind of times, and people would, you know, it's a little bit messy. So it would be tidier to have them come in, you know, spaced apart, so we could, because we had all the tables set up that we then, and we had it kind of overly perhaps scheduled, you know, this group 1 will go to this table, but yeah, it got a little bit messy towards the end of the day, but we certainly got through a lot of people, and I think the learning was really, you know, very positive.
So those groups with the tables, 2 or 3 or 4 tables, was there one peer mentor in there, or there was...
No, one in each group.
Yeah.
One on each table.
Yeah, each group has its own mentor. Yeah, 45.
12.
And we had also there were a couple of kind of, I can't remember what they were
Super
called.
mentors who mentor the mentors.
Yeah.
Like a military.
Driving around.
That was
We
instruction.
came in as well. So, you know, it's also a balance between kind of scaring the students of, you know, I'm touching the book, do you need help? No, back away, back away. But yeah, it was good because it was so many staff, and I think so many staff, so many mentors. I think as well the mentors learned, you know, they were like, oh, I haven't done this for a while. Oh, you know, let's write this how you do it. So that was a really nice positive as well.
Excellent. There's actually a question from Zoom from Elizabeth Uriah. She's asking, is there a connection with academics, for example, in our group work with organising classes?
In the past, we have told the first year lecturers about the peer mentor program, and I suppose that would be the next iteration of this, is to somehow then use those same groupings in that first year mandatory units. So that would be a utopian view. Yeah, that would be a goal. Aspirationally, yes, at the moment. Yeah, but not in practice. That would be a good thing.
We do it in medicine. We have our transition groups in their weekly MU-OLT group.
Yeah, I suppose logistically the challenge would be our peer mentors are assigned on postcode and course, and obviously that is a very different breakup than the allocation to streams, so they wouldn't necessarily be in the same stream, so that would be a challenge.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think it's lovely to be really focusing on the learning plus the community, so that's really great. Okay, we're moving on to our next one now, and I'd like to introduce David Overton from the Faculty of Science. And this presentation is on reflection, thinking about employability, something that's on our mind on a regular basis. So, David, over to you.
This is my first learning lunchbox, so please be gentle with me. I've tried to incorporate some student voice, both in video and audio, and a little bit of reading for you to do as well. It's just mainly so that you don't have to cope with my thick Yorkshire accent. Okay. So I want to talk about my unit. I was asked to actually lead this unit on coming from the UK a couple of years ago. It's similar to something that I used to do in collaboration with my wife Tina before we came out, so I was quite comfortable with the unit and being asked to do it. So, the unit's aimed at final year of science undergraduates. It's part of the REMSTEC project, which is reconceptualising maths and science teacher education. And the aim is hopefully, well, one of the aims is to actually give science undergrads a taste of teaching in the hope that they may go on to do a master's in teaching and get into the classroom, because Australia, as with many countries in the world, including the UK, need science, well, in my opinion, need science specialists, need somebody with a bit of passion for science. It's very popular. We had to cap the unit in the first run through in terms of the fact that, well, because of the fact that it's running in workshops, back-to-back workshops, which are capped to 2025 because of the size of the room, basically, and the hands-on nature of what we do. The School of Biomed got to hear about the unit, and they were looking at placement opportunities for their students. So I met with a colleague from there, and the students from the School of Biomed were very eager to join the unit and made a good fist of the unit itself. I had to market it to their current second year with a view to them taking it up next year. So it's very popular, and in students' words, it's unique and refreshing. I think that's because they have opportunities to engage with students quite closely from other science disciplines, which is not something that they do day in, day out. They're often quite linked within their own discipline. I deliver 5 introductory workshops, which is a tall ask in terms of the fact that I've got to train them to be teachers in about 5 sessions, along with giving them an insight into employability, which I've got quite interested in that. That's the main Monash aim, is to raise that awareness of employability, and research tells us that that awareness does need raising. So they have the 5 workshops, and then they are placed in schools, and we chose primary schools so that these undergrads are placed outside of their comfort zone, so that they can really engage with them and be challenged by the employability aspects. Because many of them on coming to the unit were hoping to go into secondary schools and kind of pass on their knowledge, etc., etc. Having said that, many of the students who were thinking about doing Masters in Teaching Secondary, I'm quite pleased to say, changed to primary, because I think that's where we need to start. I think we need to filter it up through the different phases and kind of help existing practicing teachers in schools to update their PD, etc., etc. There are 4 assessment elements. Students on the unit tell me that they like the fact that the assessment elements are interrelated. In other words, one feeds from another. So I guess in some sense, constructive alignment there. So we've got feedback from the school and myself in terms of the students' professional nature and their performance in schools. Employability-wise, not particularly teaching-wise, because that would be unfair, although they do a really good job. Second element is the presentation, group presentation, and the third element is an essay, which comprises 50% of the assessment. But the main interest for me, and what has become the useful element for the students, is the reflective journal, and that's kind of in the first one through where lots of my problems started. as you will see. So I've got a video here which hopefully will give you an insight into what students do.
Oh, you guys got the same colour. No, he's cute. No, how? We got that one. Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, they've got like that mixing it up. I know how cool that is, right? And how much do we okay,
Thanks, class, for listening. Now that we have your attention, and we have a few questions I will ask. Now, why do you reckon the reaction had occurred with the slime? What type of reaction is this? Yes. Yes. And is it irreversible or reversible? Irreversible. Awesome. Now, looking at the particle theory from last week, what happens to the particles after we added in the borax into the PVA glue? Yep. Yes. So the particles became more close together, and so it became more of a solid instead of a liquid that it was previously. So that is a irreversible reaction because we can't. It's something that we.
So much fun. Like we were both worried with planning that we might not have things or they might not care, especially with the elephant toothpaste experiment. This one they weren't as like amazed with.
Yes.
But the elephant toothpaste, I was like, this is so boring. No one's gonna like it, and it was so amazed. So it was really great. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
So, have you taught this age group before?
Yes. Yep. And
First time.
Have either of you felt like maybe you might want to go into teaching in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'll now consider it as an option.
Really?
Yeah, same.
It's such a positive experience for you?
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting it when I came into this unit. It was kind of like, oh, I'll try it out. But yeah, I really.
So what have you enjoyed?
I was really surprised by how bright the children are and how engaged they were. Teachers were there to support us as well, and it was very nice.
I think it's great, like, that you can see that you're having an impact in their lives, and when they ask you questions about things that they learned, it's really great because you're like, wow, I taught them something and they really understood it. Yeah.
And do you think that outside of teaching, or even if you simply going to teaching, do you think the students have designed how you develop useful skills
Yeah.
in terms of employability in the future?
It definitely makes puts more emphasis on planning and just getting more prepared for work and just getting to work in time. Well.
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, I think for me, because I'm applying to medicine next year, and so I've got my interviews coming up next week. So I'll definitely be mentioning this because it's helped me so much with teamwork, planning, all those different employability skills that we learn about, especially like taking initiative, public speaking, pretty much everything really. So yeah, I think it's been a fantastic year.
And has this experience changed your idea of being a teacher in the classroom?
I really appreciate what the effort that teachers actually put in. Wow, I underestimated how much planning they had to do with teaching person. Wow.
Yeah, like we only had 2 hours of class,
and it's like,
and we
wow.
planned so hard to do those 2 hours. Yeah, I can't imagine how teachers do it on a daily basis. Yeah. Just to say that I can't believe that there's not many people doing this here because it's actually one of the greatest units I've ever done at university. Yeah, it's probably my favorite.
Top,
yeah.
The children do actually cope with particle theory. We actually use coloured balls and a parachute, and it's all about the modelling and making it visual. So issues with reflection. I kind of assumed that there were a group of 8 really bright students, and I didn't think I'd have any problems whatsoever in the first run through. And then, because I was kind of formatively assessing their journals throughout the course of that particular run-through, discovered that they couldn't reflect, and so their reflective journals were just a diary of what they were doing, and had to come up with some sort of knee-jerk reaction to that and give them some support in terms of modelling reflection, I guess, and it helped, but I was a little bit disappointed with that particular run-through in terms of that particular instrument. Because the best case scenario in the first run-through was the fact that the reflection was an evaluation. They tended not to personalise things, they tended not to look at things with an eye on the future and the past, I guess. So I introduced various instruments for the second run-through, which hopefully helped. I became interested in reflection from a research point of view, and I was thinking, well, is it just science students? Is it peculiar to them and the way that they're being conditioned to operate? And I suspected that art students, and thinking back to my former pre-service teaching students, I thought they might have a better grasp of it, but not necessarily. I think the lack of context is a problem, and these students are fortunate in that they have got that context in terms of a real world placement with a client and everything. So just looking through those bullet points. Yeah, the journal was, I stressed to students, really important. It was the most important element of the 4 assessment features because it fed into the other 2. So there was a practical side of their journal which supported them in structuring their presentation, and there was the more of a reflection and an employability side which fed into their essay. And they got to grips with that, particularly in the second run through, and I think possibly because the second run through had the benefit of exemplars from the first year, which helped, and I got more of a feel for the situation here and working with Monash students as well. The other thing that queered the pitch was this notion of employability, because students didn't know what employability was. And again, it was an ask you make of me situation for me, because I just assumed that they would be okay with it. So, things I used to support for the second run through was a pre-unit lesson, which I devised based on a workshop that Barb McFarlane did, and it was kind of a decision tree branching database options type thing that led them through it. They all attacked that, But the feedback from that was the fact that it was a bit contrived in terms of the fact that I had to come up with the scenarios and type them in. And so it was contrived, but I couldn't come up with anything better. There's the Jenny Moon strategy where you have the actual episode or the occurrence on one side of a page and parallel to that, the reflection. Similar to something that I did in the first run through where I just basically got them to do a strategies, comments in the margin type thing in Word, where they teased out aspects of employability for them to reflect on, and they reflected in comments in the margin. That was difficult because they didn't know what employability was. There was a lot of modelling from me in sessions, which helped, and I found that the face-to-face and talking through it and getting feedback from each other helped. And as I said, they had the benefit of previous exemplars as well. Just to try and bring that to life.
What experience have you had on reflecting on your learning?
Not much at all. I think the only experience I've had so far is sort of writing a report for a project that I did in chemistry, so I did a chemistry project.
A strong part of this unit is reflecting on what you're learning and how you're learning. Dad done this fabulous lesson with you. How do you think you will be able to develop as a teacher by reflecting on your learning?
We get a lot of advice from Dave continually in these tutorials, and I write a lot of it down, and then later when I do my journal entries, I sort of think of which ones relate to myself better and which don't as much.
You want to present yourself well. Like we did mock-up interviews for employability and stuff like that, but we never really knew what, they were like, make sure you're very employable. So we never really knew what that meant. So in that sense, I've come across it, but I've never really put it into practice, like the thinking about employability itself. I've never done that.
Apologies for the sound, I'm technologically challenged. So I'm just, the next couple of slides give an insight in terms of what I have seen as improvements from the second run through. So the first run through, the journals were very much like a diary with smatterings of evaluation, not really reflection, and not personalised. You can see there, if you quickly read through that, all of that, there are elements within there that give an insight into thinking, but certainly it's more personalised. Just drawing something from that actually, this particular student talked about group work, and lots of the students talked about group work because a feature of the unit is collaboration. So they're going to schools in pairs, they plan in pairs, they work with me as part of that team from occasion and the actual practicing teacher. And I talked about collaborative learning, and they said, well, we don't do collaborative learning, we do group work, and it's not really good group work because we get given a task and then we all go away and do our own little bit, and then we come back and do the presentation, so there's no real collaboration anyway, it's just all done independently. And so there are kind of peripheral things like that coming out of their feedback, again, which gives an insight into kind of pedagogical approaches and whatnot. And we have, if I can see, oops, this is not the final version actually. So if I take you through that, if you would like to see the final version with an update of I'm willing to share, but it's a large file size. So we've got some audio, I hope.
For me, I haven't really thought too much about employability before. So if I had to describe, like what employability is taking out of it, I wouldn't be able to do it without reflecting on that activity.
It's still not going to be very loud, is it?
So yeah, if it weren't, I wouldn't really be able to say this thing or if someone.
Sounds good.
me, I haven't really thought too much about employability before. So if I had to describe, like what employability should I gain out of this, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the reflective journal and actively thinking, this shows teamwork, this shows organisation, this shows whatever. So yeah, if it weren't for the reflective journal, I wouldn't really be able to say this unit gave me these skills. Or if someone just even asking an interview was an example of organisation you had, I wouldn't be able to go, oh, well,
Yeah, so I think in terms of being out in the workforce, the most important part of the learning experience is actually realising and taking into account like how you learned and like the effect that had on you. Because if you just do something simple to the outcome, then you're not gaining anything from it really. And a lot of workplaces I think are now shifting to a more, you've done this now and you gained that outcome, but how can you improve on it for next time? If it reflects, then you're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
Angus Rogers.
That concludes. I don't want to share that.
I recognise the voice.
So do we have any questions on Zoom? Questions anyway?
You may want to link your students to Student Futures next year, which is an employability platform, which articulates the key skills that employers are looking for, and it might scaffold your students' understanding of employability pre-unit, so that when they go in, they know the language and they know what things they're looking for. It's a university-wide platform called Student Futures,
Which is on the big screen.
I think I'm aware of that, although I didn't know that was part. Oh, that's what it does, yes. So it's a way of capturing student stories around those key employability behaviours, if you like. So it'd be great to give them that tool and get them engaged with that space prior to the unit, because then they'll be able to reflect and articulate those indices on that platform. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I think it's something that's certainly on our agenda. Employability and student futures is great. I remember teaching a postdoctoral class, and these are the whiz kids that have done so much study while they've been here, and they could not articulate the skills that they had as well. So Student Futures is absolutely fantastic in that space. And move to the big screen, and you'll hear all about it. It's happening now. Okay, we have our final presentation today by Amber McLeod and Kelly Carabott from Education, Increasing Students' Digital Competence. Over to you, ladies.
Okay, so hello everyone. So that last presentation actually leads very nicely into our first slide. So what we were looking at is over the last couple of years, it's become very popular for different places to do studies about what are the jobs of the future going to look like. So there's stories about things like IBM's Watson, who's got into medicine, who's actually in Australia, as well as a lot of hospitals, particularly in the US, where it's like a Siri on steroids, where you can say to Watson, a patient has presented with these symptoms, what should I do? And you can speak like that. You can speak the way you might speak to Siri. And Watson is a massive supercomputer that is connected to all kinds of research that's out there, the latest research, and also can be connected to the test results from the patients. So they'll say, okay, so Watson will be able to say, survey the literature and say, okay, these are the issues. They're very common for this particular thing. You should test them for that. You send them away and test them for that. All the things feed back into Watson. Watson says, this is what I think they have, and I think this is the best treatment plan. So you think about the roles of doctors, perhaps, and then you think about the amazing nanotechnology, for example, they're using in medicine. You think, okay, things are changing a lot. Think about, for example, taxi drivers. Are we going to have taxi drivers in 50 years? Are they even going to be around? Think about the different ways that they predict people will be employed in the future, that there will be lots of things like Uber, lots of these online things where people can say, I am a plumber, so they don't need a plumbing business. They can just actually advertise themselves on these websites, and they can be accessed by me, and they can come around to my house, magically fix things. So a lot of these studies are all saying pretty much the same thing. They're talking about the different employability skills that students are going to need because traditional jobs might not be there, and we don't know what will be there. So creativity, problem solving, communication, collaboration, that kind of thing. This particular group, Foundation for Young Australians, they surveyed how many jobs was it? 4.2 million job ads over 3 years, in the last couple of years, and they filtered it for entry-level jobs. And they found that for computer skills, which is what we were interested in, IT skills, the demand in just 3 years had increased 212%. It was the highest increase. So they're looking for things like financial literacy and collaboration, that kind of thing, but also digital skills are really, really important. They're transferable, and they're the things that we need our students to have. Now, in the Faculty of Education, it's a big deal because our graduates need to go out and teach IT. And what we're finding happening is that our students are not increasing their IT skills through our course. So whatever IT skills they come in with, that's what they leave with. And if they're not great, then how are they going to pass it on to the next generation?
So there's lots of talk in the research around, what is digital competence? And there's all of these different terms floating around: digital literacy, digital competence. So we've drawn on the work of Ferrari to actually frame interpretation of digital competence. And Ferrari is from the UK, and what Ferrari has done is synthesised lots of different studies from Europe in terms of, well, what are these key things that people are saying about digital literacy or digital competence? And so digital competence, according to Ferrari, actually encompasses all of these different points. So it's not just about the ability to be able to turn on a laptop or an iPad. And we've had students in first year where we've been talking about book apps, for example, picture book apps, and they actually haven't even been able to turn on an iPad. But Ferrari also talks about things like collaboration, and we know that collaboration is one of those employability skills. How do we do that in an online environment? And the move in university, to blended learning, how do we operate in that sphere? Communication and sharing of ideas, social media, creating of content and new knowledge, ethics and responsibility, evaluation and problem solving, and those technical operations that go with it.
So Prensky famously came up with this idea of digital natives, and it was just sucked up by society, and everybody grabbed onto this idea that, well, if you were born, in the late 90s, around 2000, you just magically know how to do everything in IT. We imagine, unless you have kids yourself or at school, you imagine that kids go through school and they just learn everything they need about IT, and when they pop out the other side, they're all magically digitally competent. Now, NAP-ICT, which is similar to the NAPLAN tests, but this one is in ICT, has been running since 2005. And if we just have a look at the latest version, which was 2016, so we're coming up for a new one soon, 2014, sorry, you can see that actually digital competence is dropping in school. So these are the results for years 10 and grade 6 students in Australian schools. Okay, so we're going backwards. We're becoming less digitally competent. Now, lots of people have looked at these results and said, what's happening here? Because there's actually a statistically significant difference, particularly in the year 10 students. Is it that tests are becoming out of date? What's going on here? And a lot of people, the people who write the tests, were quick to defend themselves and said, no, we update our tests all the time. So it wasn't them, they think. So what's going on here? It's very confusing. And we think that it's just this assumption that teachers are assuming, they'll get it. They'll figure it out themselves. They'll learn it at home. And also teachers are not feeling that confident about teaching it because their education perhaps didn't involve IT, and they think, well, it's an extra. You don't really need to teach IT, but we don't live in the world where you don't need to teach IT at school anymore. It's very, very important. So obviously coming into university, these are the year 10 students. Coming into university, we're not saying that only 52% of our first year students are coming in digitally competent, but we're at Berwick campus, and for the last 2 years we've surveyed our first year students coming in, masters and undergrads, and about 60% of them say they have good or very good IT skills. That means 40% are saying, and actually 8% self-identified as having low or very low IT skills. Now, in schools, they are, as of next year, not only embedding IT into the curriculum, which is what's been happening for a while. Every teacher is supposed to be teaching IT, but they're also explicitly going to have IT units. And schools are kind of struggling with that at the moment. How are we going to incorporate that? A lot of university degrees, especially our education ones here and across the group of 8 and other universities as well, are still following that embedding model. So in a lot of our degrees, not all of them, because I know you've got one, but a lot of our degrees, we don't have specific IT units, even though that's a big part of the curriculum now. So embedded. And when you think about your own IT skills, I don't know what you're like in here, but I know certainly in the Faculty of Education, IT to some lectures there means I know how to use a PowerPoint and I can manage Moodle. So how can they teach that to their students? And then our students, when they graduate and become teachers, how can they teach that to their own students? So this real problem going on here.
So one of the big issues that we had then is if we're having students coming in who are self-identifying as not being digitally competent, Monash assumes that they are coming in. As soon as they enrol, it's all online. They have to access, their units online. They need to know how to access Moodle. Amber and I have had many conversations with students who have said, I spent the first week before I even started trying to work out the online system. So we just assume that they're going to come on and that they know how to do that. Coupled with that is a lot of our assessments at university, and I know particularly in the Faculty of Education, we're moving towards lots of digitally mediated assessment tasks. So we're asking them to get online and create an infographic, for example, create a blog, create a website, create an animation around teaching strategy, for example. And so a lot of these students are coming in, they're not feeling very digitally competent. We're then saying, okay, you need to learn all of this content and then you need to produce something that's digitally mediated. And then when you go out on professional experience, we're expecting you to actually model these particular skills to your own students.
So what we are trying to do in the Faculty of Education, and one of the reasons we wanted to be included in this is because we want to know what other faculties are doing also, because I certainly have spoken to people from other faculties who said, yes, there are students who are having issues with our systems, is we've started doing, well, it's been going for a while now, opt-in sessions over at Berwick, where students can come in if they want to. We have about one a month, don't we, come in, and they can come in, we talk to them about, one, how you actually use this equipment, because as Kelly said, we've got students who don't know how to use iPads, and two, how this fits pedagogically, so how can they use this in real life in a lesson. And we're delivering these with professional staff and academic staff. So the professional staff come in and they say, this is how you operate an electronic whiteboard. And this is if you've got any problems or questions, this is what you might encounter. And the students get to meet those professional staff who in the Faculty of Education are in a particular area, and they then have a contact point. They can go and say to that person, oh, remember we had that thing about that and I needed some software, how do I get that software? So they've got that. And then we come along as the academic staff and we give them real examples of this is how you could use this in geography, this is how you could use this to teach English, this is how you could use it for primary, this is how you could use it for secondary. So they're getting the pedagogical and they're getting that technical know-how as well. And we also give them a lot of time to play. So our sessions this semester, we've had 1 hour of us talking and instructing, and we've had another hour where they just get to play with it. Because, for example, in education, particularly in primary school, electronic whiteboards are very common, but there is not one place in our entire degree where they get to play with the one. So we give them the opportunity where we say, well, come and play with it and have a go. And a lot of students have gone away and their feedback has been, that's the first time I've ever been able to use that. Or I didn't have an iPad when I was at school. I only had a laptop and I've never actually used an iPad. Or the other way around. I only had a smartphone. I don't even have a computer. So we certainly have first year students who come into uni thinking, I need a computer. They just had no idea what was happening in there. So.
And one of the other things which I've really noticed, which has come out of this particular project, is when they actually go out on professional experience, they actually are able to position themselves as the expert in that particular scenario. And, we've had many emails from students saying things like, oh, I ran this online interactive quiz. Now, my teacher had never seen it before. She was really impressed. Now she's, you know, integrating it into her own practice. And so what we're trying to do is to get, I suppose, the wider teaching profession to view Monash education students as leading the way in innovation with ICT in terms of pedagogy.
And the other thing that's come along with this project is we've started setting up, this one is a Moodle page, so this is our Moodle page for this, where we have collected, we've videoed a lot of the sessions that we've done. We make a list of all the resources that we use and the links to them, so that anybody can go on here, if they, you know, if they're an education student, can get on here and have a look at all the videos and stuff that's on there. And what we hope to do, what we'd love to do, is to have a Monash-wide one where, for example, like this is just, you know, pie in the sky stuff, but on the eSolutions page, there would be a link saying, do you need help? And all those magical ones that are in the library, you know, the library has, for example, there's a really good set of videos on Turnitin. But the ironic thing about all the help stuff for IT is that you need to be competent in IT to find the help stuff. So it would be lovely if there was some kind of, you know, along with our English Connect and everything, a digital connect where they could go for, okay, it's the eSolutions page, so this is technical help, but also, I don't know how to use this program, and here is a whole collection of all the things we could use for that. So that's just this thing we've been running with over at Berwick, and we'd be really interested to hear about what's happening in other faculties.
If you're finding similar issues within your own assessment or with your own students.
Any
comments?
I'm sure students in all disciplines would really appreciate help for beginners, how to upload YouTube movies. I think there's a presumption.
Yeah.
Students are like, oh, well, they got a good ESSEX score.
Yeah.
Great and everything. And I think, as you said, we presume they're digital natives, but all are varying different skills. And part of our job as educators is to get them up to skills. And then the second point would be how great that you're enhancing students when they're out on placement, because no doubt they're the ones who'll be offered a job at the end of it. So great to see how students out there educating the wider teachers. That's the way of the university.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I mean, at law, I've had a few students. I had one at research learning point that came into some research help. But the trouble they were having was that they would find things, but they didn't know they needed Adobe Reader to read the PDF. So they didn't open any of their files, and they didn't understand that they had to go and download this free program to be able to read the PDF files and with their research. They didn't know how to set the default program, you know, so that it would automatically open using that program, and all sorts of things on their computer. So I ended up spending a lot of time with them and, you know, showing them a few things and then telling them where they should go for more IT help. So it was surprising. I thought, oh, surely everybody knows to use Adobe.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It is, well, it's certainly not the majority of students, but when you think about, for example, the academic literacy support we give, well, that's not for the majority of students. If there's 10% of the students who are struggling, then can we just keep assuming that they'll get it, or say, oh, well, that's their problem? I think it is the university's responsibility to actually teach, especially if it's for assessment tasks. You need to do this. I've seen, oh my gosh, people being asked to do just a graph in Excel, and they're actually shading in the cells to make a graph because they don't know how to do it.
Thank you so much, ladies. Keep in touch with the Academy because we very much specialise in faculty to bring them together. So thank you for that. And I think we do have a responsibility also of making sure that our students can undertake assessments, whether it's IT or case study or whatever they want them to write. So keep up the good work. So thank you all for coming today. It's great to see many of my library colleagues here. And I also want to say, please keep an eye on our Moodle site and our website as well on what's coming up. There will be some information coming through teaching and learning committees across the faculties as an update of what's happening in the Academy. There's a range of things that are open to new researchers and advanced researchers as well. We're very much interested to hear what you'd like to have happening. And one of our new initiatives is our networking breakfast, which is basically if you come up with an idea that you want, such as digital literacies that you want to share, you can bring a community practice together and we'll provide the breakfast, send out the invitations, and you can facilitate and get things happening. And we can probably organise something out at Berwick too. So whatever helps, you know, really help our students and help us in the workplace. So thank you, everyone. We have lots of good things coming up. We hope you come to the next one as well. Thank you.